It's time for another Dice Tower review with Z. Garcia.
Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Star Trek Panic. Star Trek Panic here puts you in the shoes of the Star Trek crew, and you are attempting to complete missions in the game, wipe out your opponents, and then warp out of there in order to win the game. It is of course based on the Castle Panic base game, and it's part of that franchise. So let me show you how this works, give you a quick overview of the game, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you what I thought of it. So here's what comes with the game. You are going to get a board with 6 sectors on it and 3 distances on each sector. So 3 rings, as you can see. You get the Enterprise here in the center. That is a freely standing structure, so it can be rotated. You got a deck of missions. You get this little mission timer card. You are going to get a deck of cards. You are going to get a few other tokens and things like that, and a few miscellaneous things. And then a bag with different ships, Romulans and Klingon and all sorts of things. And then you also get the character cards themselves and some cheat sheets and such. So that's pretty much it. And you are attempting to, in order to win the game, cooperate together, complete 5 missions, of which you'll keep track of down here. And then after the 5th, make sure the board is clear of enemies and you win the whole thing. If you cannot do so, then you lose, typically because your ship will blow up, okay? So at the beginning of the game, everybody picks one of the characters. You have Uhura and Spock and Sulu and Kirk, Scotty, a few different ones. You pick who you want to be, or you are dealt it randomly. You are also going to get a hand of cards, and you are going to begin. You should also definitely have one of the cheat sheets just to help you out and see what's going on. So the first thing you're going to do on your turn is draw up to your hand limit. During the very first turn, of course, you will already have a hand, brand new hand. Secondly, you're going to reveal a new mission, assuming there is not one that's already going. And so you would reveal the mission, and the mission tells you a few things. It tells you what it is you need to accomplish in order to win the game. It tells you the time you have in which to do it. And so, for example, in this one, it says 5, so I would take the little token here and put it on 5 to keep track of how much time we have. And then it tells me parameters for winning, also a reward if we do win the game, the mission rather, okay? So that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're also at the beginning of the game, by the way, going to be seeding some of the ships here on the outer rim, which I'm not going to do right now, but there are some ships already coming towards the Enterprise. And then, once you flip a new mission, assuming you need to, then you may trade a card with another player. You can, from your hand of cards, if there's something you can use now, or something they can use on their upcoming turn, you can discuss it all freely. You can give them a card, they can give you a card back, etc. And that's it for the trading. After that, then you get to play your cards and you get to maneuver. When you play cards, you can play as many cards as you want to, and you can maneuver once. The cards come in a couple of different kinds, but many of them are going to be hits, which look like this. They illustrate in the very center there the Enterprise, and then around that, they are colored in with where they can hit. And so this one here, which is medium range side phasers, would hit, if we're assuming this is the orientation of the Enterprise right now, would hit here and would hit there. And then this one here, the front short range phasers, would hit these 2 in front. But you can, in this game, maneuver. And you can maneuver once, which means this or the other way. And so if I did this, now my side medium range phasers would, of course, hit here and here. So you have those kinds of cards. You have other kinds of cards which let you boost up different hits, things like that. You have some cards that are going to allow you to prevent hits. You have dilithium and titanium cards that are going to allow you to rebuild or repair shields or the ship itself, things like that. So all good things that you can utilize to your advantage in order to protect the Enterprise. Several of the cards are also going to allow you to assign points to missions that require them, and by that I mean engineering credits or command credits. And so the card would do whatever it normally does, but you can also just assign it to the mission down here for whatever it needs. In this case, this mission here does need some engineering and some command. So, if you do that on your turn, then you're working towards that mission. And so that's basically it. As far as your turn goes, is dealing with every threat out there, etc. The maneuvering. One last thing I want to mention is, as I said, you can turn the Enterprise, or you can thrust forward. And when you thrust forward, the idea is that everything that is in front of you, in this case, these two sections here, would to simulate that you are coming closer to them, would move towards you. Okay, everything else stays the same in relation to the ship, but everything else comes towards you, and that's a component in many of the missions where you need to, go somewhere, and you are going to, since of course you can't move this, you're going to be bringing them closer to you. Once that's done, we're going to check the mission status. If the mission is not over, we have not completed it, then the clock ticks down. After that, the threats move and fire. So let's take a look at some threats here. And they are going to look like this. Oftentimes, you would bring one out and roll a die to put them out. By the way, right after threats move and fire would be draw 2 new threats. So I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here. Draw 2 from the bag. But let's say I pulled this, and I would roll 4. I'd put it there, and then I'd pull this one, which is not a ship. Instead it says magnetic storm. Roll die and rotate the Enterprise. If it's a 1 through a 3, counterclockwise. If it's 4 through 6, clockwise. So you can also sometimes hit events like this that mess you up a little bit. You are going to, as far as the moving the ships and them attacking you, most ships anyway, not every ship, but many of the ships would, let's move this stuff out of the way here for a second, would move and then shoot at your ship. So, shooting. For the first hit on a shield, you are going to take one of these tokens here and stick it on that shield, and that counts as one hit. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it kind of looks like that. Second hit from something would just take that shield out. And so you would then get in here and remove the shield carefully. But, it's kind of a little difficult to do that. There we go. And so you would take this thing off and just put it aside. And then if your ship continues to get hit, you are going to put damage on the ship itself. And so, you might take one of these and then stick it on the ship there like that. A new ship, a new hit on the same part of the ship would then add a piece of the you add a little token that represents that the ship is broken. And so, for example, this quadrant up here, you would overlay this on it, and now you can see that it is damaged. It's blowing up. There's fire coming out of it. So that's how that works. But again, you have to take the shield out with 2 hits, and then 2 hits will do in the hull of the ship. You can, as I said, use some cards to rebuild this back up and put the shields back in place, rebuild parts of the ship, etc. So that's how the movement on these characters goes. There are many different aspects to it. Some of the ships will move and then cloak, and you can shoot them while they're cloaked. Next time they move, they will uncloak and shoot you, things like that. Some of them will just, instead of when they arrive at your shield, continue to go and hit you. Some will simply get there and stop, but impede you from maneuvering your ship at all. And there are a few other different styles, but that's mainly it. So, you are going to continue attempting to complete missions, bringing out the baddies, wiping them away, maneuvering the ship as you see fit, utilizing your character's special powers, of which they all have one, utilizing the cards you draw and play in order to succeed at the game. As I said before, 5 missions, then clean up the board. If you ever completely fall apart, if the ship is has, I want to say, 3 sections completely damaged, 3 or 4, I forget right now. then you have failed the game, okay? And, by the way, these baddies, when you empty out the bag, as opposed to in Castle Panic, you cycle them back in. So this will not trigger the end of the game. You gotta get through the missions. So that should give you an overview of how the game operates. Let's go back up top and let me give you some final thoughts about Star Trek Panic. I'll admit right up front that I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan, so there was a little trepidation going into this game. I wasn't sure if I was going to get it. I wasn't sure if it was going to be too specific, that with my limited Star Trek knowledge, I was going to have a hard time getting into the game and sort of role-playing it up a little bit. But I have to say, the game does a really good job of balancing the Castle Panic system, which I think is a solid system with the whole defending the center and all of that stuff, and adding the Star Trek theme to it, having characters that have specific powers, having this whole concept of maneuvering the ship, having this whole concept of completing missions instead of, in Castle Panic, just running out the bag of the bad guys. They all translate very well, and I think this is a really solid game in this franchise. It fits the Castle Panic ideas, and it does it very well. So I was impressed with it. It's one I enjoyed. Now, I did have a couple of issues with the components mostly. Most of the components are fine. I like the cards, they're okay, The card quality, the token quality is fine. What I didn't like so much was the ship itself. It looks cool, and I like that a lot. And you can store it in the box built, which is a plus for sure. But constructing it, the doesn't quite line up right, when you built up the whole thing. Here at the let me show you at the if you bring this out here, okay. Here the thrusters don't quite line up right on it, and if I keep pushing them, I'll actually start detaching part of the whole thing, and it's just real fiddly with the shields around it. So to remove these can sometimes be a pain, and then on top of that, not just removing it or reattaching those, but the tokens you stick on the shields, on the ship, just add a level of fiddliness that I wish wasn't there, unfortunately. Not enough to keep me from playing the game, mind you, but it's one of those things that I wish they had done something different. I don't know. That whole sticking a piece of cardboard and shoving it into some other piece of cardboard, or in the case of the shield, a piece of cardboard stuck into a piece of acrylic plastic, just doesn't look very good for one, and it's not conducive to fun. It's just fiddly. I don't like it. So that's my big negative there. But other than that, the gameplay itself, the time it takes, the interaction between the players, the variety of the missions, all of it gets a thumbs up from me. So there you have it. That is Star Trek Panic. Go check this one out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.